Danielle from Soulsy at the Movies.
Thank you for being here today. My question is, last year you had the whole pivot to TCM because of the festival not being in person. How exciting was it to add on the HBO Max component this year?
Yeah, I'll start with that, and then certainly the others can jump in with the sort of the unique opportunity that this presented for all of us. We really, again, last year that was a really tight pivot, and we knew we could pull something together for the network. At that time, HBO Max hadn't even launched yet, so we didn't even have the temptation to try to develop something for that environment. But this year going in, we really knew that since we weren't going to be able to do it in real life, we wanted to challenge ourselves to do something that sort of gave more folks access to the festival experience. And certainly we as a company are really excited about HBO Max and its evolution in a short amount of time. So we thought it would be a really smart thing for us to kind of partner with another part of our company that already has this wealth of library product available to us to program, but also it was really important to us because we know it's a different audience than the audience that lives with us on the network in cable. And we don't want to only, kind of speak to the people who we have been programming to for 27 plus years. We want to find the new audiences as well. And that's absolutely HBO Max. So it became something that was, born out of necessity, just given the ongoing health and safety issues. But now we're really pleased that it sort of drove us to partner and to really activate the TCM hub for this festival. And we know it's going to be a lot of learning for both sides of that.
I think one thing that I would chime in here on is that we're always looking at other film festivals, what types of innovations they're doing. And so it was interesting after we did our special home edition, which was, you could argue it might have been one of the first, if not the first festivals to kind of pivot in that way. And we were fortunate, we had a network, we could do that quickly. But many film festivals, of course, in the last year have essentially created things on third-party platforms. They've had to figure out how are we going to put these films in front of our audience. And this is kind of a new thing, having a film festival on a streaming service in this way. And we felt incredibly fortunate that we could partner within the company and be on a platform like HBO Max, because that's not something that's accessible to many people doing an event like this. And therefore, that puts us in front of so many more people that the festival might not have been in front of before, which is really exciting.
And then I'd just add that one of the advantages is that the rights are different for linear and for streaming. And so we had access to a different set of movies for HBO Max than we did for linear. And that opened up possibilities. And so, and it made it more challenging in a lot of ways, but more fun too. So that was another big plus just from a programming standpoint.
Awesome. Thank you, Charlie. Next up, we've got Jeffrey from Vegas Film Critic.
Yes. Good morning from Las Vegas. How are you guys today?
Hey. Good. How are you?
Las Vegas.
Genevieve, this is for you. I'm a huge fan of TCM Underground. I watch it every week, and usually I expect some of the most bizarre cult classics on that. And this year you chose Grease 2, which, I saw the original Grease when I was 11, but then I was 16 when I saw Grease 2, and I know every song to it. It's one of my guilty pleasures. So I was wondering, how was the decision to choose a musical for TCM Underground this year?
That's a great question, and I'm actually going to hand it over to Charlie because it's a member of his team that actually programs TCM Underground, and we're super excited to have TCM Slumberground as part of that on the network this week.
Yeah, Millie DeChirico programs our Underground franchise, and so she stepped in here and we asked her to choose the movie, and this was the one she selected, and we're super excited about it because it does have this huge cult following. And I remember when it came out, and I remember Michelle Pfeiffer on a motorcycle, but other than that I don't remember anything else about it. But it's people love it, and I think are excited about it.
Great, thank you. Next is Gig from Latino Review.
Hi there, folks. With HBO Max and streaming as a part of the program now, and audiences are much different than those who attend film festivals. Does the term classic cinema change in definition, and how do you choose your films nowadays to fit more of the audiences that are online?
I wouldn't say that the definition of classic changes. The mix might change. So on TCM, you'll see linear TCM. I mean, we just had 31 Days of Oscar, and what do we play? Truman Show was on the other day, and Almost Famous and other movies. Those, when it makes sense and we have the rights and we can play them and we can mix it in properly, we'll certainly play them. When you're in streaming and specifically HBO Max, you just might see more of those newer classics than you would on TCM linear. You wouldn't, so there's no specific movie you can say, well, that works on one and not the other. But I do think you can say the mix is different here than there, and that it's a different audience. And a big part of the goal of HBO Max is to entice people maybe a little bit more with those newer classics, but then get them excited to discover some of the older stuff that they might not have seen too. And that's something we're very conscious of when programming it.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up, Jim with Real Talker.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining. I'm curious when it comes to kind of the headline of the festival, the movie this year, I believe it's West Side Story, which 60th anniversary, that completely makes sense in every aspect and being such a classic. But what does it go on usually every year? What's the formula in a sense? Or is there like a checklist that you go through to select your kind of headliner film for each year? What are some of the maybe some inside, the behind the curtains thing where you go the process of selecting kind of the headline film for each year's festival?
Well, I do think you want a reason to celebrate. So an anniversary helps. Like if it's a key anniversary, it sort of makes sense. When we were doing the live festival too, if it was a restoration, a premiere of a new restoration, that helped elevate it. And certainly having talent that can speak to it and participate is a huge part of it too. So we come together with lists of possibilities and go over the lists and kind of see what makes sense. West Side Story helped this year by the new remake coming out, Steven Spielberg's making, and so there's a heightened interest in it. So it really is, you want something worthy of a big event, right? And you need those different, some combination of those different things. And I think even if you had only one or two of those, it might not make the cut. You really want all three.
Great, thank you, Charlie. Next up, we've got Jeff again from Vegas.
Yes, that's me. This question for someone who wants to answer it. I had recently watched the Plan 9. They sent me the screener. That was just so funny. I was wondering, how did that come about? How did you get contacted with it? Tell me the story behind getting that, because it was just classic.
Somebody who is deeply involved in the programming process, Scott McGee, along with Stephanie Thames, who work with me in the programming area, he has developed a relationship over the years with Dana Gould. And Dana Gould is the one that's behind this, one of the key people behind this presentation that he does every so often live. And we talked about doing something like this at our live festival at one point, and they had actually taped it and they had put it together, and so it just led to a conversation, and it's really, I think, a combination of the relationship that Scott had and his great idea to sort of bring it to the live festival, and then when the live festival went away, to evolve and make it work here virtually.
And Paula, there's all those interstitials between TCM movies where they're showing those classic interviews that if you're a fan for 25 years plus, I've seen them so many times, but you have new ones like Julie Andrews or Peter Bogdanovich. Has there been more discussions about being aggressive about getting more of those original recordings and interviews? Because I could just think of so many to do for these films.
That's an interesting kind of area. I think there was an ongoing effort to create these archives, and it was funded in a way that made it possible and operationally doable. And it was also smart because it was when there was a really wide segment of the population who were still with us, so we could capture these stories. And over time, it got a little harder, it got a little more expensive. Some of the focus around that particular area, just waned a bit for all kinds of reasons. I think more than anything, what I would say is we also recognize that we have this very deep archive of those elements that we didn't always elevate over time. We didn't go back into some of those that I think always bear revisiting. You know, you can find nuggets in so many of these conversations that we produced years ago. So yeah, you know, kind of short answer is we'd love to keep doing it. I think we've got to figure out ways to make it operationally an easier lift for us. One thing that we've learned throughout this experience of producing remotely is that we can create really good looking pieces, even if we're not in the same studio as the talent. And you'll see that, you know, this weekend, that it really is about optimizing what you have available to you at a given time. And I think for a while we used to say, if it doesn't look like film, like we've produced this on film, then we don't want to do it. And then that makes it hard to do as much as you want. I was saying earlier, you know, we shot these pieces across 9 countries, and that just wouldn't have been feasible if we had required them to come to shoot with us here in Atlanta or New York or LA. So for us, it's like, what is the best content or what is the best interview we can get, regardless of how it's produced.
Thank you, Pola. We also have another question from Danielle from Soulsy at the Movies.
Okay, God willing, the festival is back in person next year. What does it mean right now with a venue like the ArcLight Cinerama Dome currently out of commission?
I'm happy to take this one. So creating the footprint of the film festival, the ecosystem of Hollywood, it has changed every which way since we've done this event, you know, starting with doing the event in 2010. And what's been fantastic is that over the years, we've, you know, really developed some great relationships with a wide variety of venues, whether it's the El Capitan, the Hollywood Legion Post that we just brought online a couple of years ago, the Cinerama Dome, the Academy Theater, you know, on Vine. There are actually a lot of amazing options within Hollywood that we've been able to utilize over the years to add on to the core footprint that we have with the Chinese Theater and with the Roosevelt Hotel. And so it's definitely been tough to watch what's been going on overall with movie theaters, and especially looking at the ArcLight and what an amazing venue this Cinerama Dome is. I think we're very optimistic, just knowing the history of that particular venue and how popular that location of the ArcLight is, that it will come back in another incarnation. And we hope to be back there, you know, at some point in the near future.
Thank you, Genevieve. Next up is Gig with Latino Review.
Folks, obviously, I'm going to piggyback on Danielle's question here, because optimistically, we all believe that everything's going to be back to normal next year and everything's going to be open. However, because of this pandemic, it has actually changed the viewing habits of a lot of audiences quite a bit, including myself, because now I enjoy interviews via Zoom, and I'm hoping this doesn't go away. But is the format streaming going to be permanent down the road for the festival, or do you guys want to basically shift back to what it used to be traditionally?
I think both are true. I was just going to say both are true, in that fundamentally we need to make sure that we're providing an experience regardless of where the person is. I think that's what we've learned. And as you say, Gig, you now are enjoying doing your interviews from Zoom. So I think it's more about finding and making the best experience regardless of the platform. And we'll just have to kind of throttle our resources against how much we can do across all of them.
Exactly. You know, so many film festivals that have gone exclusively virtual in the last year. I know from talking with other festival directors that they've gotten very positive responses from much of their audience, and especially new audiences that they're bringing in that might not live near where the films are showing. And so I think a hybrid model is something that we're going to see a lot of when we see in real life events come back. The other thing I would say is that certainly there's room for both. I think people are getting positives out of both. Our festival typically sells out. There are physical limits in terms of how many people we can bring in. And if this is a way to reach more people, why wouldn't we do that? We're really thrilled about that opportunity, especially this year with HBO Max. But there's also nothing to replace the in-person aspect of fans coming together to watch these films on the big screen as they were originally shown. And that's at the heart of why we started doing this festival. And so I think there's room for both. And I think audiences are looking for that too.
I think it's especially true for older movies that you don't get to see on a big screen very often. And it's a unique kind of thing that, wow. I mean, I know Casablanca, I know Singing in the Rain, but boy, seeing it with an audience, it's a different experience. And I think we love that. I mean, I think we hope that's part of it. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Let's go back to Jim at Real Talker.
I was wondering, the TCM brand in itself, it's been working what you guys have done for all these years, but is there something you would want to add to the TCM brand that you haven't been able to yet, whether it be some sort of like a museum maybe, or another aspect, maybe another outlet that you haven't been able to do or use? I'm sure there's been discussions probably about expanding or diversifying it in a way now, especially with the streaming apps and all that. Has there been something on your minds that's really stood out that you haven't been able to yet do but would like to?
That's a really great question. I will say, yeah, for us, there's always an interest in developing new ways of reaching out to fans of classic movies and fans of the way we present classic movies. The TCM Classic Film Festival was born of exactly that, and a sort of a dream on a whiteboard until the folks here and many, many more realized there was a way to make it happen. So there are other businesses that have kind of come through that as well. And it's important to us. It's important to us not only because it's a great way to extend the brand into people's hearts and lives, but also from a revenue standpoint. We want to make sure that we do what we can, frankly, to fill the coffers so that we can continue to focus on this really unique space that we have. So Genevieve's, really charged with developing those ideas. And as soon as the festival is over, she is going to kind of regroup with her team, right? Thinking about what some of these opportunities might be.
Yeah, I think just to build on that, thank you, Pola. Over the years, the festival has morphed into, our way of thinking has changed when we consider how do we serve classic movie fans? What are fans looking for? And as many of you know, we have a robust publishing program. We've done a classic cruise. We have big screen classics, bringing movies back into theaters across the country. We're always thinking about what are those touch points and where are people looking for us to be and what makes sense. And so we're constantly kind of sifting through ideas and looking at what's out there. And it's kind of amazing to think about where the brand has gone, but also when we think about especially the brand being in front of the HBO Max audience, we're really excited about the opportunity to get in front of more people who we believe are going to be thrilled about, with what they find when they discover TCM. They don't know about it already.
Awesome. Thank you, Genevieve. Next up, back to Jeffrey in Vegas.
Hey, everybody. I was always curious, how much influence in decisions do the hosts get? Do you carve out a little space for them with their suggestions, or how does that work?
Oh, just this morning, I got an email from Jacqueline Stewart on really wanted to get a certain movie for an upcoming programming. Yeah, they have an open door to make suggestions all the time, and they often do. And we work closely with them, and we want to accommodate when we can. There are times where it doesn't make sense or we can't, and that happens frequently, but we always take their suggestions, and they always have great suggestions, and they help the programming, to be honest. And that's there's an education process for them to learn, like, oh, not everything movie's available, right? You can't always get everything because of rights or whatever. But I would say starting with Robert, and that all the hosts have had their mark and wanted to weigh in, and because they've all had certain areas of passion and wanted to, you know, and where they knew more than the programming team about certain subjects too, certainly, and they could help shape the programming in a really good way.
I was just going to add that, sorry to interrupt you, Jeffrey, but we assemble this incredible squad of people presenting on our network because they know a lot, right? And they're not just, although they are pretty faces, they are definitely not only super presentable. They have areas of expertise and, you know, academic strength that we want to bring to bear. And it's, I think, you know, again, Charlie and team are remarkably welcoming in that process because they also have a network to run and they need to get 350 plus movies on the network every month. So it can't only be driven by those desires, but they're very welcoming in the process.
And briefly, to get on my soapbox here, you know, as an avid fan for the last 25 years of TCM Plus, I don't drink. So every time I see the TCM Wine Club come on, I always feel like I'm missing out on something. And I've told all the hosts when I've met them, can't we have a tea club? You know, there's so many great examples of tea. People drink tea more than wine, I would think. You know, so every time I see the TCM Wine Club, I just want to I feel so left out. So tea and coffee.
I put the tea club down on your list,
Yes.
Genevieve. How cool is that? I know Wendy would subscribe to that.
I'll add that to the list.
Yeah, me too.
I like that.
There we go.
I will say, you know, I like wine, but it is cool to hear different ideas because we know not everyone wants to drink wine. We get that. It turns out during the pandemic, though, a lot of people do. So weirdly, that has been something that has been really successful during this time when you're stuck. You can't go out and see friends. How do you create kind of some sense of festivity at home? And the wine club has been helpful for many.
Awesome. And yes, I would totally subscribe to ATCM Tea Club. So I would be the president and curator for sure.
I'm telling you, that's great. I think that's a really cool idea.
Absolutely. All right. So I don't see any more hands up, but we have a little bit more time. So
I just want to say again, thank you to all of you because Las Vegas is opening up on June 1st at 100%. I'm a native and you're showing Ocean's 11, which means the world to us here in this town. So thank you so much for showing that. And it's just I'm so excited about the festival this year, virtual or not. You know, it's such a great escape.
Well, speaking of TCM things that we might want, I always wanted a TCM casino, and so that's my wish for our next brand extension.
That would be dangerous.
For at least a few.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Well, we're still running. We got about 6 minutes of time. Do we have any other questions? Oh, yes, Danielle.
Not so much a question, but given that I'm in Chicago and on a tight budget and can't quite go to LA for this festival every year, thank you so much for utilizing TCM last year and TCM and HBO Max this year.
Great.
That's great.
Thank you. Yeah, because I think it's going to be a companion that it should always be virtual. You should have it's an added component because it says people who can't make the festival still feel included. And because I go every year, I've never missed the festival. And but it still felt like I was there last year. And this year just seems like there's even more buzz about it.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. I think that we'll share that with the teams because that's the goal. That's certainly the interest in making sure we can bring as many people to this as possible. So that's great. Really great to hear.
Yeah. We always talk about the two venues, obviously being TCM Linear and HBO Max, but we also have a third venue, which is going to be our more interactive fan facing as these live events that we're going to be having throughout the festival. So we're hopefully going to recapture some of that Club TCM spirit with some of these live Zoom events. So I think that's just like our one way to, in addition to social media, and be able to interact in person with our fans. So that's going to be a good time.
And I am disappointed.
Thanks for mentioning that.
Leonard Maltin and his Disney from the Vault. I missed that so much. That was just brought back so many childhood memories, and he's just the best. So I missed that programming too.
He's great.
Great, and that was great. We had a really good partnership with Disney there for a while.
And you showed the wrong Gabriel Gill, but it's okay. It was dubbed, not the original. I noticed that 5 minutes into it. I'm like, no, not this one. It was awful.
Uh-oh.
I think I remember Leonard's email about that.
Yeah.
Because it was dubbed and it was just, that was a horrible TV version that they showed a long time ago.
Ooh.
Only purists would know that, so.
I was gonna say, blame the people who sent us the movie, Disney.
Sure, yeah.
Just kidding.
But we catch those kinds of things all the time, and we didn't catch that one.
I had a quick kind of thought. Like, I always wondered what it would be like if you guys ever thought about certain kind of programming where you'd invite kind of a regular Joe off the street and have one of the hosts maybe watch a movie with them and discuss it. Maybe some like millennial or whatnot that would never see a classic movie and have them watch a classic movie and kind of maybe change their perspective and hear their thoughts. I always wonder if that'd be kind of interesting, maybe television or kind of a feature to a program, having one of the hosts who has, like I said, everyone at TCM has so much history and knowledge, watch a movie alongside a regular kind of person who might not never experience some of these classics and have like a discussion afterwards. I think that it would always be kind of a fascinating aspect.
They have to
I
turn.
think that's cool. Go ahead, Jeff.
I said they would have to turn their phone off first.
Well, yeah, of course.
Oh. Well, I think about that kids react, those kind of videos where you see, and I think that's a really cool idea. I feel like there's got to be some version of that we can try. It's tough to get an individual to sit down for that period of time in real time watching something with you, but I think there really is something in it. And I have two grown-ish daughters who every once in a while discover that the trope or the convention that they've seen in a movie they love comes from something 40, 50, 60 years ago. And they're like, oh my God, that's what that's from. And that's all you want to do is kind of turn people onto that if they haven't had that opportunity coming up to see these movies. So I think that's a really cool idea. If you don't mind, I will share that with our head of marketing.
Absolutely, go ahead.
Yeah, because Family Guy, that's the way to bridge to classic film. Because I show so many kids Family Guy because McFarlane is such a fan of The Music Man and all these other films, and their minds get blown when they realize they were watching a Hollywood musical at Family Guy.
That's right.
I think when I was a kid, it was the Flintstones and Anne Margrock and Cary Grant.
Love that.
Yeah.
Keep those ideas coming.
I was gonna say, this is our brainstorming.
It's always a new outlet, something diversifying, in a way, something new and different. So,
well, I don't mind bragging on the team that manages our social handles. They've been doing some really incredible stuff in TikTok. If you're on TikTok, and you might be surprised to know we're on TikTok. The young woman who produces that content first of all, she's like straight out of college herself. So she knows the medium really well. And she can identify the clips in a movie that are going to catch fire, that are going to go viral. And it's not always the things I would expect, So that's been really fun. And it is almost a small version of what you're saying, namely just getting, especially a younger person, to stop and say, oh my God, why is that so cool? And gives them some time to play with it. And in some cases, reinterpret it. And of course, then it becomes viral. So TikTok has been kind of a fun space for us to experiment in, just to really put classic movies into a conversation.
For everyone. Yeah,
That's
question.
Right. That's right.
Awesome. Well, everyone, we are wrapped. We've got a minute on the clock. And since this is our last room, I'd like to thank Charlie Tabesh and Genevieve McGillicuddy and Pola Changnon from TCM for joining us this afternoon. And again, if you guys have any other questions about the festival, please reach out to us. And we really hope you enjoy the festival as much as I think that we're all going to